Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. So, today I wanted to share my story of having taught English in Japan. So, I taught English in Japan back in 2005 to 2006. I worked for a company called ECC, or as the Japanese say, Ishishi. And I worked there straight out of university. I knew my last 2 years of university that I really wanted to go to Japan. And there was something that rose up in me. And people ask sometimes, like, why Japan? Besides the fact that I'm a martial artist and I studied a Japanese form of martial art, that could be part of it. Certainly, we used a couple of Japanese words like kibarachi and gi and obi, but really we didn't speak a lot of Japanese in my dojo. Unfortunately, that would have been nice, but my teacher taught from different, bigger lessons rather than just the language. So I heard some language tapes. A friend of mine was interested in learning the language, and I remember driving in their car and I heard it, and I was like, oh, there was just something so beautiful about it. And it was a little bit sing-songy to me. And I loved how the consonants were all connected with the vowels, except for the consonant n, which is not connected to a vowel. And I don't know, it's like I fell in love. It's like I heard the siren song of Japanese and I was like, well, give me some of that. And I liked sushi. I liked, there was like little things that drew me in. I also loved some anime. I wasn't like a huge anime nerd. I forget there's a term for it. I'm not remembering right now, but I was into my fair share of anime. But it was really the language that it just sounded beautiful. And so I started studying it. So I started studying the language mostly independently using workbooks like Japanese for Busy People, Japanese for Dummies, Pimsleur's approach. I think that there was one or two other ones, and then I just wrote it all the time. I practiced with Japanese friends. When I went to university, I went to a school that had a lot of Japanese students. It was a conservatory school, Shenandoah University in Virginia and Winchester, Virginia. And I was practicing and I thought, oh, wow, that's really fun to learn a language. And so I kept studying and I was graduating with an English degree. And what do you do with an English degree? Well, you teach English or you become a journalist, or there's a couple other ones that you could do. But, my dad had been an English teacher and it just kind of made sense to me. And again, I had that rising to teach in Japan. And I heard through, like, I was at the cafeteria at university, and there was a gal who was talking about this program called the JET program. And I was like, oh, what's that? And she's like, oh, it's this program where you get hired to go overseas, and then, you live in Japan and you teach English in a high school and da 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 da. And so I found out about this, I think, like 5 days before the deadline. And, there was like final exams and all this stuff. I was just so I like something like leapt out in my heart. So I went online. It was a very extensive application, and you have to like get passport photos and some like going, running, getting passport photos and trying to get this all filled out. So I got it in like the night. I overnighted it to the place, and I waited. I checked the mail every day like a little kid, and finally the letter came in, and I opened it up and I read it, and it said, unfortunately, we did not select you, and a couple reasons why. And I crumpled to the ground. I fell to my knees. I remember very clearly in my rented a house in Winchester, and I was roommates with actually the Prince of Mauritania. Isn't that an interesting detail? His name is Mohammed Lamine. Hi, Mohammed, if you ever listen to this. Um, I crumpled to the ground, and I cried for a few minutes, and I just felt like literally my heart broke. And after about 15 minutes of crying, I got up and I went to the school library because I did not have a personal computer back then or a laptop, because this is how old I am. And I went to the school library and I I was like, there has to be more companies like this that exist. And so I, popped open the computer and I searched, and there was um, two or three. There was two places I applied. One was Nova, and then one was ECC. And they both accepted me. I heard just a couple days later, and I chose the one with the highest pay and the best vacation package. So I like to tell that story about teaching in Japan just as like an opener, because that is working through what seems like defeat and then using it as fuel to keep going and find a way. And I did, and I got over there. So, anyways, so I graduated, and then they called me like in the spring, and they're like, "Hey, we have a teaching position that opened. Would you be able to fly up to Toronto, have an interview, and then we'll see if it works out?" And I was like, "Yes." So booked my flight to Toronto, had an interview. I was very animated. I'm very friendly, right? I'm good with people. So, and having an English major, like degree, it looks really good. So I wound up getting the job. And then my boyfriend at the time, he actually came and moved over there with me for a little while. But initially, I went out there by myself, and I did the thing. There was a training that happened with the company ECC, and I had a group of people that I trained with, which was cool because then those people, like you're a foreigner in a new land, and my Japanese wasn't that great yet, but I knew some. But you want to bond with people, so wound up hanging out with them outside of training, and then my job started, and I taught everyone from like 2-year olds to like 98-year olds, and I learned so much about Japanese people and their hearts and how they learn. And, it was really cute. The like 2-year olds, little Japanese kids are the cutest. And they tried to, repeat the words that I would teach them. You teach them simple things like cat or toe or face, things like that. And so watching the diligency of these small Japanese children with the parents right there, just like encouraging them. And it was really, really a treat. I would have, Japanese girls that came in and would try to learn English just maybe because it was trendy, because they would never study. They would just come in, and we would practice sentences together. And so I would say, Hiroko, how was your day? Like very, very simple. This is like there was like beginner, I think like A, B, C, and D. And so D was the like lowest level. So they stayed there. That's okay. I would say, Hiroko, how was your day yesterday? And they say, it's a good. And I did shopping. So they would say, I did shopping. So that was their answer almost every time. So those lessons were fun. Maybe not as satisfying as certainly the stuff that I teach now, because I had to teach like very basic level. And when you're in a situation like that with a corporation, you have to be animated, especially like Japanese. They want you to, you know, kind of play that role and be really, I don't know, the sort of gaijin genki. Genki is like happy and excited. So that job was exhausting. I worked with little kids. I worked with teenagers. Oh gosh, I had to sub sometimes teenagers' classes. And there is this thing in Japan called kancho. And it's very violating, but it's when Japanese kids take their fingers like this, like a gun, and they poke your butthole. What? Yes, that is a thing there. And I only had it happen once, but I kind of caught them right when they were about to do it. I made the mistake of bending down in front of these middle schoolers because there was something that flew behind the desk. And I saw out of the corner of my eye one of the kids going like this, all the kids laughing, and he even wound up, and I turned around and stopped him just in case. So I don't have the full story to tell you, and I'm actually really happy about that, because that was I saw my life. I saw my life flash before my eyes. So that was interesting. the work culture can be a bit much, especially having worked at a Japanese corporation. As a teacher, you're treated a little bit differently as far as the foreigners. They kind of don't expect quite as much, but they always wanted me to like staple these little flyers to tissues and go out on my free time and hand out the tissues. When I did it and I actually took my lunch break, they seemed very, very angry with me. And I remember there was like a work report that I got that basically said that I didn't work as much as they wanted me to, but I worked all the hours that I was scheduled to. But it's just a different culture as far as that's concerned. The food is so good. Sushi in Japan, as you can imagine, is the freshest, it's the most delicious, and it's very simple. Like all the caterpillar roll this and rainbow roll that, they don't really have that in Japan. It's like very simple, very feng shui, and they would have soy sauce and wasabi, but a lot of the little packs didn't have ginger. You'd have to buy that separately. And, but even convenience store or konbini, as they say in Japan, sushi was head and shoulders above like even some of the stuff that we have in the top restaurants here, just because they've been working with it for, I don't know, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. So the sushi in Japan, expectedly. Italian food, nah, do not even. If you go to Japan and you're eating spaghetti every day, you're missing the point anyway. So tempura, ramen, sushi, like all these things, teppanyaki, all these things so good in Japan. And why would you go to Japan to eat pasta? You deserve some punishment if that's the case. Um, Traveling in Japan was so much fun because I did know the language, and I'm leading my retreat in November of next year, November 5th to the 16th. And just so you know, we have like a group forming. We're doing a Zoom call next week, and then we're going to be doing more Zoom calls. So if you want to go to Japan with me, it also includes a couple of Japanese lessons, and it also includes a module of life coach school. If you would like to go to Japan with me, I would love to have you. Onegaishimasu. Please come. Let's learn some Japanese. And I really love going to Japan and immersing myself in the culture, the language, the food, the arts, the spirituality. I want you to embody it. I don't go to another country as a tourist. I go to understand. I go as a student. So if you want to go to Japan with me and take on that mindset of being a student, absorbing the culture and embracing it and like understanding it from a cellular level, that's what we're gonna do. Um, so yeah, the food in Japan, obviously amazing. And people are so polite and sweet. I mean, if you get lost and you need directions, people will get off their train, go the opposite way, and make sure you get to your destination. Like that's how they show love. Um, there are different contrasts in Japan as far as the blinking lights and the city and just, this sort of culture of busy and almost kind of debauchery. It depends how late you stay out, right? But typically you might have that in a big city, but it's interesting in Japan because there's such a contrast. Everyone seems to have their shit together. Like everyone's dressed nice. There's no like in sweatpants and stuff like that. Everyone's dressed super nice. And like usually people they're going and doing their thing and they're quick and they're busy. And but then at night times, like people just like, I don't know if it's drinking and then just kind of like letting loose, but it just seems like such a sharp contrast compared to some place like America. Now, the countryside and places like Kyoto, very traditional places, and the temples and castles and all this, like there are places that you can access within them that you wouldn't be able to in America because somebody's ruined it for us, right? But in Japan, there's such a respect for tradition and culture there for the most part because like it's not America, it's Japan. It's for the Japanese. So like, if you're a foreigner and they don't want you in there, no, you don't like you just don't do it. I mean, it's not your country, it's not your place. We sometimes have a sense of entitlement, not there. So elders are up here too. So if you ever have an elder asking you in Japan for some kind of help, drop what you're doing. They're important. um, But, overall, Japanese, I have found, especially around Osaka, I can't speak for Tokyo because I didn't live there, but are warm and friendly. And, if you have a little bit of animation, and especially if you know some of the language, they will warm up to you and they're super helpful and sweet people. They might be a little shy, and their English might be, you might get people. They just don't feel comfortable speaking English with you. Then you have the contrast of as visiting Hiroshima, and obviously that's a huge sightseeing place. And which, by the way, we're going to hit up Hiroshima when we go in November. But there was this school bus that was driving by, and like me and my friends were there, and I had chaperoned a student and his girlfriend. I got hired by a family because I could speak Japanese, and I put together an itinerary. How cool was that? But there's these school kids that drove by, and they're kind of hanging out the window, and they're like, sumimasen, excuse me. I was like, yes. Like, how are you? And I was like, oh, I could tell their English just maybe limited. I said, I am well. How are you? And they say, good. How are you? And it just kept going back and forth. So I humored them and I answered about 5 times. And then after that, I was like, okay, you need to learn a new phrase. There's so many sweet memories from when I lived there, and used to ride my bike through the streets, and okonomiyaki. Saying okonomiyaki and takoyaki are some of the foods that are known in Osaka. So delicious, so yummy. Can't wait to have it again. Can't wait to show you. So make sure you come. So, overall, my experience teaching English in Japan was lovely because every day was an adventure. Using a different language when you're, living in a different country and you can't read all the signs, I just find that kind of thing exciting. It gets you out of your head, it gets you into, exploratory mode. And as long as you can take care of yourself, as long as, because like I said, in Japan, the people sometimes can be a bit shy. And so if you don't have a knack for making friends, it can be a little lonely. That's another reason why going with a group is nice, so that you can, have people together, have friendships, and, share the experience together, which is lovely. But, it was a life-changing experience. And I always wondered, like, why was I so drawn to the language? But there's a power in language, and when you take time to be able to understand a language and you try to speak it, you will start to understand aspects of the culture. I've done it like Sanskrit. It's like by the time I got to India, I just knew so much about the culture. I understood like the warmth, the friendliness of the people from the Vedic teachings and from some of the other sacred scripture. And from practicing, moving it through my body. Same thing with karate. I've been practicing it since I was 13. And so, it just makes sense in my body. It starts to have an impact on the nervous system. And there's certain things about the culture and traditions that you're going to understand because it's built into the arts. So, so I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. And hey, if you want to come to Japan with me, onegaishimasu. Let's go. Ikimashou. Let's go together. You can reach out, Erin at erincoach.com. You can also go to thriveyogafit.com, and you can see Experiencing Japan with Erin. Click on that. You can see some of the deets. If you have more questions, reach out to me, and we'll have an interview. We'll hop on the phone together. So, all right. Arigatou gozaimasu. Take care. Bye bye. Mata ne.